There is a particular kind of pain that comes from growing up with a parent who never quite grew up themselves. It does not always look like obvious neglect or abuse. Sometimes it looks like a parent who makes every conversation about themselves, who cannot handle your emotions without becoming defensive, or who expects you to manage their feelings while yours go completely unacknowledged. This is the reality of emotionally immature parenting, and millions of people are navigating its effects right now, often without even having the language to describe what they experienced. Emotionally immature parents are not necessarily bad people. Many of them love their children deeply in the only way they know how. But love without emotional maturity creates a very specific kind of wound, one that tends to stay hidden for years, sometimes decades, because it is wrapped in the complicated layers of family loyalty, cultural expectations, and the deeply ingrained belief that respecting your parents means never questioning them. That belief, the idea that respect and silence are the same thing, is exactly where the real conversation needs to begin. Emotional immaturity in a parent does not always announce itself loudly. It can be subtle, woven into the everyday fabric of family life in ways that feel normal simply because they have always been there. An emotionally immature parent tends to have a very low tolerance for emotional discomfort. When you come to them with a problem, they might minimize it, change the subject, or turn the conversation toward their own struggles. They often struggle to take responsibility for their mistakes, and when confronted, they may become defensive, play the victim, or use guilt as a tool to redirect blame. They can be emotionally unpredictable, swinging between warmth and withdrawal in ways that leave their children constantly trying to read the room. They may have rigid thinking, an inability to see situations from another person's perspective, and a deep need to be seen as right. For the child growing up in this environment, the message received, even if never spoken aloud, is that your emotional needs are secondary. You learn to shrink yourself, to become the emotional caretaker, to prioritize keeping the peace over expressing your truth. And then you grow up and you carry all of that with you. Respect is one of the most loaded words in the context of family relationships. From a very young age, most people are taught that respecting their parents is non-negotiable. It is presented as a moral absolute, a cultural cornerstone, and in many families, a religious obligation. And there is genuine value in honoring the people who raised you, who sacrificed for you, who shaped the earliest chapters of your life. But somewhere along the way, the definition of respect got distorted. It became synonymous with agreement, with silence, with the suppression of your own feelings and needs in order to keep a parent comfortable. Real respect, the kind that actually sustains healthy relationships, is not about compliance. It is about acknowledging someone's humanity, while also maintaining your own. It is possible to respect a parent and still recognize that their behavior caused harm. It is possible to love someone and still set boundaries with them. These things are not contradictions. They are, in fact, the most honest expressions of a mature relationship. The problem is that emotionally immature parents often cannot tolerate this kind of nuanced respect. For them, anything less than total agreement feels like an attack, and any boundary feels like abandonment. One of the most common and least discussed consequences of emotionally immature parenting is a phenomenon called parentification. This is when a child is placed, either consciously or unconsciously, in the role of emotional caregiver for their parent. You become the one who listens to their problems, manages their moods, absorbs their anxiety, and keeps the household emotionally stable. You learn to anticipate their needs before your own. You become hyper-attuned to their emotional state because your sense of safety depends on it. On the surface, this might even look like closeness. Parents in these dynamics often describe their child as their best friend, their confidant, their rock. But underneath that language is a profound role reversal that robs the child of something essential: the freedom to simply be a child. The long-term effects of parentification are significant. Adults who grew up in this role often struggle with guilt when they prioritize themselves, difficulty identifying their own needs, a tendency to attract relationships where they are always the caregiver, and a deep, often unconscious fear that love is conditional on their usefulness. Recognizing this pattern is not about blaming your parent. It is about understanding why certain emotional habits formed, so that you can begin to consciously change them. If you grew up with an emotionally immature parent, the idea of setting a boundary with them probably feels somewhere between terrifying and completely impossible. And that reaction makes complete sense. From the time you were very young, you learned that expressing your needs or limits came with consequences. Maybe your parent became hurt and withdrew their affection. Maybe they escalated into anger. Maybe they recruited other family members to their side, turning a private conflict into a family-wide judgment of your character. These experiences teach a very powerful lesson, that your needs are dangerous, that advocating for yourself will cost you love. So you stop, you accommodate, you minimize. And then you wonder why, as an adult, you feel so depleted, so resentful, so disconnected from your own sense of self. Setting boundaries with an emotionally immature parent is not about punishing them or cutting them off. Though in some cases distance is genuinely necessary for your well-being, it is about deciding, often for the first time, that your emotional health matters. It is about communicating what you will and will not accept, not with cruelty but with clarity. And it is about accepting that their reaction to your boundary is not your responsibility to manage. Perhaps the most painful part of recognizing emotionally immature parenting is the grief that comes with it. Not grief for a parent who has died, but grief for the parent you needed and never had. The parent who could have sat with your emotions without making them about themselves. The parent who could have apologized when they were wrong. The parent who could have seen you, truly seen you, as a separate person with your own inner world. This grief is real and it deserves to be honored. Many people resist it because acknowledging it feels like a betrayal, or because they worry it means they are claiming their childhood was terrible when there were also good moments. But grief and gratitude can coexist. You can be grateful for what your parent gave you and still mourn what was missing. Allowing yourself to feel that loss is not weakness. It is one of the most courageous things you can do because it means you are finally telling yourself the truth about your own experience. One of the hardest truths about healing from emotionally immature parenting is that the apology you deserve may never come. An emotionally immature parent often lacks the self-awareness and emotional capacity to fully understand the impact of their behavior, let alone take genuine accountability for it. Waiting for that acknowledgement, that moment of recognition where they finally see what they did and how it affected you, can keep you stuck in a cycle of hope and disappointment for years. Healing does not require their participation, it requires yours. It means doing the internal work of understanding how your early experiences shaped your beliefs about yourself, your relationships, and your worthiness of love. It means building new patterns, finding relationships where emotional reciprocity is real, and learning to give yourself the validation you once searched for in a parent who could not provide it. It also means redefining what respect looks like going forward. You can choose to maintain a relationship with an emotionally immature parent while also protecting your emotional boundaries. You can be kind without being a doormat. You can be loving without losing yourself. The goal is not to change them. The goal is to finally, fully become yourself, separate from the role you were assigned in their story, and free to write your own.